Yay. Do you struggle with standing in front of a large group of people and talking about something for a long period of time? Do you have stage fright every time you have to stand up in front of a big amount of people to explain to them this very important topic and why it's so important? Well, I know I have, and ever since I started high school, that's one of the biggest things and one of the hardest things that I've always struggled with was standing in front of an audience and telling them whatever topic that I was supposed to be, discussing. So I always wondered, what could I do to make my presentations a lot better, a lot more entertaining, and a lot more engaging? So after doing some research, I found a couple things, which I'm going to talk about. First, I'm going to talk about doing something unexpected in your presentation. Then I'm going to talk about framing your story. And lastly, I'm going to talk about using proper body language. So when you do something unexpected, for example, stopping in the middle of your presentation after a certain point and asking your audience to talk about it, this catches your audience completely off guard and will begin getting them thinking about everything that you've been saying. And if they haven't, it'll get them paying attention more just in case you stop again and ask them to do the same thing. According to Claudine Wilder, founder of Wilder when you do something like this, you really draw the audience and you stopped, and now they have to pay attention to whatever it is you're trying to do now. But because even in future reference, they're expecting you to stop and ask them questions based on what you've been teaching them and presenting to them. The next thing I'm going to talk about is framing your story. Now, framing your story is more along the lines of getting ready to present and preparing your presentation. You want to basically set your story and quickly describe the key points and why they're important and why the audience should care. If you don't do that, you'll end up just having a very bland presentation that was quickly put together and kind of, the audience can tell that you don't really understand what you're doing. According to Chris Anderson, the most engaging speakers do a superb job of briefly describing the key points, explaining why is it important to them, why they're discussing it, and then also quickly explaining why the audience should care too. I just explained to you what framing your story and how it can benefit you in your preparation process. Next, I'm going to talk about using proper body language. Not a lot of people notice it, but especially when you're presenting and especially when you're nervous, you'll tend to move around a lot. You use your hands, you'll start moving your feet around. You don't really notice it, but one thing you can do is actually learn how to control this nervousness and these sort of outbursts while you're moving around trying to present and kind of calm yourself down. If you actually learn how to properly use these, you can actually express a lot of emotion in certain parts of your presentation, and you can also emphasize a lot of importance on words or key phrases that you want people to be thinking about and remember. According to Errol Ahern, arm or upper body movements especially can help key points and even engages the audience, like if you were to randomly point out a person in the audience and immediately ask them a question on what you just talked about. There's many ways that you can easily keep an audience engaged through simple body movements. In conclusion, I've talked about doing something unexpected in your presentation. I've talked about framing your story and better preparing yourself before you give the presentation. And I also gave insight on how body language can be very useful during your presentation. And these things have helped me over the 4 years. Each time, every year, I try to do something, at least one of these things in my presentations, and I've noticed that not only did my grade improve, but I also noticed that when I was speaking, my audience, wasn't looking at their phones or kind of wandering off. They were actually looking at me and engaged in what I was saying. Thank you.
Yay! Word. That was excellent. Word.